Firstly, I'd like to thank the gallery owner, the Society, of course, for allowing me, it's an honour actually, to interview Rain about his new work, to actually be a part of something that is, it's more than an interview, it's art in itself. I first come across Rain, I think it was 96, it was Berlin, it was cold winter's day, and I remember a situation, we were actually, there's a big rug in front of us, and Rain had been describing actually his breakfast. He still is, as far as I know, a fast food fan, and in a situation like this where it's an opening and unveiling, those moments that define an artist and his work, that bring that relationship into the kind of the public arena, and as a means of kind of celebrating that moment, he always starts off with a Whopper burger, and that amused me. I don't know why, but it amused me. And in the course of talking about, and it's to do with attention or the effect of the fats, actually. There's a whole chemical reaction that happens with fast food. I don't know whether you're aware, but there's a lot of concentrated fats in especially a Whopper burger, because you've got 3 slices of meat, you've got no vegetables, everything's very sort of synthesized and manufactured, and the kind of fats that and the way they affect the liver, it actually produces, not in everybody, but certainly in Rain, it produces this almost hallucinogenic experience, which allows you, considering the moment, that opportunity to connect A, with the work, B, with the space, and B, with the audience. And we were there, and it was happening. And it was the first time for me, at any rate. It was my first major interview. And he was being kind to me. He realised that I was shitless. I mean, I was scared shitless. Sweat was oozing from the pores of my hand. It was like almost like the kind of Noah thing, the flood. I mean, I was scared. And he sensed that, and he just sort of brought me down. And then there's this cat that came into the room. It belonged to the gallery owner, and it found its way under the rug. And you could see this lump moving underneath this exquisite rug. And David looked at me, and I looked at David, and there was that moment, and we both just connected. And all those oily fats, you know what I mean, they sort of moved from the liver to the kidneys, and you could see it. It was a whole biological, biochemical kind of feeling moment. There was even an odour. And that was 96. Here we are today, 206, it's May. It's winter again, and, believe it or not, there's another sodding cat in the room. This time, it's not a Persian rug, it's a sheet of plastic. And there was that moment, I looked at David, and David looked at me. To bring this up, but, it'd be folly not to mention it. But this cat, it found its way under this piece of plastic. This time it wasn't so much about odour, it was more, there was a texture to the sound that reminded me of that 203 experience, which was very, very, very audible thing, and the sound of the plastic, the cat, the fur. The audience, everybody in the room completely went silent, because we all knew that in terms of a prelude, in terms of foreplay, if you like, as a means of introducing the work to the world. Wow. And here we are again today. I mean, it's almost like your signature tune, Rain. You do it every time. I love you for it, man. I love you for it. What can I say? You've chosen to remark today on the kind of realities itemised here, you know what I mean? And you're talking about the gap between rhetoric and actuality. And I remember looking when I was in South America. I spent many years in South America, and it was those early Inca works that were kind of, they emphasised more the rhetoric of the piece, but underlying that, there was that whole kind of actuality, and you were looking at actually the practicalities of cow herding and sort of urban renewal. and like to bring that whole aspect of urban renewal and that whole metaphor, which is practical cow herding, and to actually, and of course it was a very small piece, and to present it in such a way, and it was two-dimensional as well, and it was like pure genius. And today, you know, we've gone beyond urban renewal, and we're now looking at that whole Blyton thing. Well, Blyton brought it up in the 50s, and it was about the male identity searching for his female identity and the response that the female identity has to infidelity. And there was a bit there where the gollywogs and big ears were late home, and Noddy, there was it was almost a paranoia, and you felt it if you remember on page 4, and it's like normally Blyton would express Noddy with, especially the left-hand side of his mouth was often kind of, it had that kind of cheeky little curve that way. And on page 4, it was the first time I ever noticed it actually, and it was Rain that pointed it out to me. How it was drooped. It was moving downwards to the sort of the southern extreme of the page. And there's a kind of sadness there, but there was also a kind of knowing, and it was a kind of like, I'm growing up here, you know, but I don't want to grow up here. I'm feeling that feminine side, but I want to respond in a masculine kind of a way, and I'm unsure, you know, it's a new experience. And he knew, I think he trusted his friend to come home eventually, and he knew eventually there would be the sound of the footsteps in the gravel, there would be that kind of opening of the door, and there he would be. And then you go, I think we had to wait for that. It was almost near the end of the book, and there he was, you know, and I think like Noddy was expecting a sort of solitary figure, you know, sort of surrounded with guilt. But in effect, it was a jolly figure that bounced through that door with this whole kind of circle. Well, in fact, they were in a V formation, the gollywogs, which again was symbolic of infidelity. If you remember those works, Rain, that discussion we had way back in the late 90s when you'd done, you were researching, I think, artificial food colorings and their effects on small appliances in the home, and you'd been working with the South African, he was no, he wasn't a biochemist, he was an astronomer, yeah, that's right, and he was looking at, actually that was a moment as well. You remember, Rain, and there was this chap, and he was blind, actually, he was a blind astronomer, which, you know, we laughed for days about it, didn't we? You know, we're thinking, you know, a blind astronomer, which it says a hell of a lot about the world we live in. It says something quite nice, actually. But this guy was looking for life beyond our planet, if you like, and he had an elaborate receiver system, basically listening for signals, for voices, for things. And he come to the conclusion he was going to wait a fucking long time. So rather than wait for the response, he had decided to invoke a response. So he had collected some of the greatest thinkers of our times. Rain was at the top of the list there, you know, representing, I guess, you know, all that is the art world, representing all that is good with the world, if you like, all of this. And they decided to send a message out, you know what I mean? Something that was, something that whoever was out there simply couldn't ignore it. And it would invoke this response, and, you know, you'd prove conclusively one way or another in the fullness of time whether life beyond our planet exists or not. And that was the late 90s. And of course, you know, the joke was, you know what I mean, despite the efforts, and it was a global thing. I think it was Clinton at the time. It put some of his own money. He was fascinated by it. He'd just come back from a trip to Nashville, where Clinton, by the way, has an amazing collection of Elvis memorabilia, and which fascinates me. I mean, I've never really been an Elvis fan. That's not to say that Elvis's work had no meaning, but it was simply why the most powerful man in the world should choose Elvis. And the things, actually, the important aspects of that collection was Elvis's underwear. And I mean, I didn't know this until Rain pointed it out again. And that the value in the underwear, if it had been washed and sanitized and cleaned, it was worth half the price of underwear that hadn't been laundered. And of course, and then there's the whole question of how do you know it's been laundered? Well, come on, you know. Again, it's that texture that we see we find in today's work. I mean, when I was looking earlier on, Rain, at the piece, and you know, I come across that unlaundered feel, and it was something that I almost wanted. You could touch it. I mean, even I would have been 2 to 3 meters away, and I could just actually feel the tips of my fingers and that rough, kind of moist, unlaundered kind of Elvis was here kind of feel. And I knew what Clinton was all about, and I knew why at that moment why Clinton was the most, or had been the most powerful man in the world. I understood the whole cigar thing. I understood, you know, it wasn't about sexuality. It was about what Rain is trying to tell us today. It's about capturing a moment. It's representative of history, but it's also looking ahead. And there's a story there. It's that cell phone moment.